G'day everyone, welcome to Nationals 2019. I am Ibo and I'm joined by GINNY on my left and Payne on my right. We're going to introduce you to the competition and talk about a couple of things, a couple of the themes of Nationals this year. Firstly, it's the 21st Nationals, 21st ZLTAC event, and is the third time it is being hosted at Laser Zone Sunshine Coast. We have 2 international teams, 35 teams in total, and I think we're in for a ripper event. Payne, you're on the committee.
Yes.
What's different about this Nationals, and what's going to make this one special?
So we got a few differences. The first one we'll touch on is, I guess, the way we're streaming, the way we're broadcasting, and what we're trying to do with finals events this year, especially in the side events.
Yeah,
so we've got all our finals, with the exception of Masters, Women's, and Juniors, being streamed live all the way through from start to finals. And I think this will help people not only playing the events see what's actually happening, because normally the maze is blacked out. You've got not the maze, but the scores are blacked out. You've got no idea what's going on. And then when you get to presentation night, you get a sheet of paper that said, this happened in the game. Whereas this year, not just the players who are here, but the people watching at home can now see exactly what's going on all throughout every side event. And I think that really helps people stay engaged and sort of see the event through, if you know what I mean.
It has been a bit of a polarizing decision. Some of the old heads disagree, and some of the people that have been around for a while really like the announcement at the presentation night. What do you think about that, Ginny?
Yeah, look, it's definitely an interesting one. I think overall there's only a small group of players that in those final series, right? So I think for the greater community, I think it's way better that we stream it, get it out to the public, not just in our community, but really start to try and broadcast it out to a wider community. And I think, getting to an apex like the finals and just being like, nah, hands off, we're not streaming it anymore, I think is a real fork in the road for us.
Well, those are the games that people really want to watch.
Exactly, 100%. I definitely see why those people would be upset. I know, from experience last year with like my first final series, hearing those scores and going to the presentation dinner, already knowing the result, it's kind of like, there's not that sort of build up, which would be really sort of exciting. But seeing how many people stayed back at the site to watch the stream and really get around it, I think there's a lot of potential in what we're trying to achieve this year.
I remember in Bendigo in 2015, I thought that was the perfect way to meet in the middle, where the team's grand final was played live in front of the presentation dinner, and the teams came out after the grand final and walked into the presentation dinner, and everyone was there and they got to watch it. I kind of felt like that was the perfect way to do it. And obviously, logistically, with side events and things like that, that's not really possible. But as someone involved in the media and the scene, I love it. I think it's great. I think it's a big step forward. I don't know why we wouldn't want to do that. I think we want to match ourselves to traditional sports as close as we can, and what kind of grand final in any other game is like, oh, we can't watch this one. Exactly. We'll just tell you how it goes.
Yeah, I think overall we're taking steps in the right direction. Each year on year we're making improvements to the overall media process, and really increasing the quality of the production and the experience for the viewers, and really trying to make steps towards making it accessible for people outside of our community, so that they really get a feel for what's going on, and we can explain things and be able to give them all the tools to be able to understand what is quite a complex game overall for someone that doesn't understand it.
Yeah. The next, while we're talking about media, the introduction of new technologies into ZLTAC has been a massive theme in the last few years. Payne, do you want to talk about some of the new things we have, like the ref trackers and the stream?
Yeah, so I think the stream's obviously a big one. Being able to broadcast our game to the rest of the population in a way that we're working on, I guess, making it more, outside person friendly, if you know what I mean. So obviously when you see something like the 5x3 scoreboard, there's a lot to it, but now we've got cameras, now we've got the worm at the bottom. There's a lot more that we're adding every year in order to make it a lot more simple for people who may not have all the knowledge that everybody at the competition has.
Yeah, I can confirm that. A big part of my role and what I've been doing with the media stuff is trying to expand it outside of the player group.
Yeah.
So that friends and family and people back home, the players are able to share what they're doing with their friends and family, as opposed to it just being them that watches it.
Yeah.
What's next? So, got a big question. We got something big to talk about.
Indeed.
This is the first year we've ever capped the amount of teams that have been able to attend the nationals.
Yes.
That's a big decision.
It was.
And you're a part of implementing that.
Yes.
So do you want to talk a little bit about how that went down and how you think it's going?
Yeah, I think, I guess to start off with, a lot of people outside of the committee were a part of it. Because what we did was we went outside and we said to the entire player base, what do you guys think? We had a whole bunch of submissions, and I think we took a little bit from every submission, and I think we created something that works really well. I think 37 teams last year in Albury was enormous.
Oh.
It was a huge effort, and I think all of us here love the fact that the sport has continued to grow from there, but it's made it very difficult on our national competition. So during the year, we decided that, look, right, we can't keep growing like this and keep extending the length of time. It's almost a 2-week-long comp.
Yeah.
So we've made the decision, obviously, that based on a number of different factors, I guess Australia and New Zealand was split up into regions, and each region can send X amount of teams. This year's team cap was based on how many you sent last year, and if you wanted to send extras, you have to appeal to the committee. People did that. We granted extras to certain regions. The international region got a second team, and I think New Zealand got a fourth team. So yeah, there was definitely that. People did that, and I think as a result of this, the sport is moving in a new direction in terms of regional competition and national competition being a separate thing, and I think this is really good going forwards.
I think ultimately it was something that had to happen at some point.
Yeah.
And it was always going to be a difficult pill to swallow. Like it was always, but eventually, it's not like one day we were going to end up with 200 teams that wanted to come to play nationals, which is a great problem to have, but
For sure.
it's still a problem.
Yeah.
What do you think about the team caps?
Yeah, I think overall we've gone about it the right way. I think what Payne and the committee has done is put in step a process which has allowed the regions to really encourage their own sort of inter-competitions, and I think that's really the step forward. You think about basketball, and there's always those your local domestic competition, and then you sort of move through the ranks, and I think that's what we're slowly moving towards encouraging. All the regions are obviously doing their own sort of separate thing, and the way that they're selecting their teams, but overall at the end of the day, it is a nationals competition, and we are taking those steps that make it give it that prestige that you don't just tell your friends that you're playing ZLTAC nationals and they ask you where it's from, and you can tell them that you have to play these events to qualify. It's not just something that's like, you get to go if you want to go. I think it really adds that next level of prestige to the competition that we're looking for.
I think the real compromise also is the fact that we've got a much more structured approach to pre-nationals.
Yeah.
And we're sort of consistently getting between 2 and 3 pre-nationals, and that's something that any team really can attend. I don't think any team's been turned away from the pre-nationals yet.
Think so.
No, so
Not yet.
And larger interstate regional competitions, and that's kind of the middle point, and it adds a bit of prestige to the big one that we're having now. But enough about politics. What's Ginny, what are you looking forward to the most this week?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of questions that are sort of yet to be answered with the maze and the teams. I just want to touch back on pre-nats, and there was definitely some interesting results with obviously the Wolfpack and Grizzlies and who made finals, and I think there's just a lot of questions about whether the home sides are going to be able to continue to perform at the level they have in the pre-nats competitions, whether teams like the Cobras are going to be able to come in and mix things up a bit and take it to these teams with a maze that is so uniquely designed, and I think from a personal experience that this is a maze that has such a big home side advantage compared to the previous years. I think that there's a bigger home side advantage than the past couple of years. So
fair enough. Yeah. I think it is an interesting. I think it's dynamic at the top. Wolfpack struggling a little bit in some of the training sessions.
And it. Yeah.
So it's kind of broken open, and anyone can take it at this point.
Yeah.
The sort of we've seen some of the Queensland teams sort of deform, and there's new versions of those teams. So chemistry is going to be a big question. I don't think it's a guaranteed. I don't think it's a guaranteed thing that we're going to see Queensland dominate the finals like they have the last couple of years. What about you, Payne? What are you looking forward to this week?
I'm really keen for triples. I guess every year triples is different. We won't necessarily go into the format, but I think having an event that changes every year in a maze that changes every year, it really adds some spice. It really adds a bit of a unique flavour every year, and it's really interesting to see whether it's the teams that do well in the team competition are able to adapt tactics and think up things on the fly, or is it other teams that rise to the top in this dynamic situation?
Well, triples is a good one because you always see those teams that you don't really expect to perform do really well. It's definitely one of those kinds of events. The laser tag aside, the real event's the fantasy league, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about fantasy. For those of you who don't know at home, we do actually run a fantasy laser tag competition. You can find it at basestump.net. I believe entries are closed for this year, so if you haven't got a team yet, then better luck next time. But you can definitely jump on and watch how your favourite players are travelling. Who's the fantasy pick of the year? Last year it was Daddy, wasn't it? I think Spider. Yeah, 100% Spider was the value pick, and he's obviously not going to be as cheap as he was last year. But who's going to be that player, that high value player?
It's really hard because I think there was a lot of good really low cost players. Obviously Payne's the reigning champion, so he probably has a better indication of who's going to perform.
Fantasy Zeropa. Fantasy Zeropa. It is. If you have not got Zeropa on your team, you've missed out. Here's where it's at.
Right, I picked up, I want to say Dayton, the guy who won the European Championship solos. He was like a million points, and I was like, surely he, it obviously depended on him being able to translate his skills from the Worlds format across. But I think on the team he's on, which is not necessarily a super high performing team, that come Cascades, I think he'll really be able to excel his on-pack.
That's the thing. They did change the metrics on how the scoring works, and team success has a little bit more weight now than in the past, and other things like defenders get a little bit more value with denial bonuses and things like that. But a lot of people picking up Alex, the rookie from Brisbane.
Another good pick.
Yeah. So a lot of people picking up Alex.
I feel like when you look at your value picks, and I think a meme was posted about this. It's do you take the strong players on the top teams who are likely to win, or do you take players from weaker teams who might be a little bit stronger than the tier that they're playing in, because they'll do well, knowing that their team may not win, but they'll do well solo.
Well, they've increased the value of side event success as well.
Yes.
So picking your overall strong players has got a bit more value now because
it's still not much,
isn't it?
It's still not that. It's not worth.
I don't think it's worth as much as it should be. Like, personally, I feel like side events should have more, than a personal ranking in a game. Like, because I feel like your defensive players get written right off, right? They can have an amazing defensive game. They don't finish in the top 5 players in the game, and then they get punished on points.
But their tag ratio does net them points.
True.
So you get points for having a solid tag ratio. You get points for your team winning. You get points for denials, as Ibo said. That's
definitely a fun new addition.
Denials is something that happens a lot in this arena. And let's talk about the arena. You guys have played. You've played a few training games now today. As an outsider, as a foreigner, what do you think about the Sunshine Coast Arena, and how do you think it's going to play out?
Yeah, I'm definitely interested to see how it plays out. Throughout the training games, seen a lot of different strategies run. Definitely keen to see how the Queensland teams, really start playing it out. I think we'll see how the strategy plays out a bit later in the week, but I think overall, it's going to be really interesting. There's heaps of you've got to be able to defend the spots inside. They're not simple spots that anyone can hold. You have to be able to master those spots.
I think the only simple spot is the front door of blue, and other than that, and maybe the box, maybe the back door of green, but maybe.
But those are low holds that you have to hold legally in cross arm shots and
stuff. Got to hold every spot legally.
Yeah, of course. As I do as a prestige player who would never cheat.
No.
I think it's there's definitely some really tough holds, and we've spent hours, really trying to drill them and train them, and it's not something that's going to come overnight. I think we could see a lot of the home side teams perform for a longer period of time across the competition. Maybe into cascades before the gap sort of shrinks, starts to close. Which I think could be a bit different to previous years. As I said earlier, I think it is that home side advantage is that little bit more this year, because I think the maze is so unique. There's so many panels, there's so many spots you've got to learn. You can't just walk into the arena and know what's going on instantly. I think it takes a little bit more time to get your head around, know where those push spots are. And the gameplay is just so much different, because you can't move from front door to back door in like a heartbeat like you can in previous arenas. That changes the whole way the game's played. And it's really going to be interesting to see how teams adapt to that.
Yeah. What do you think, Payne, about the bases, the arena?
I don't think they play in the style that I guess suits my team, which sucks for us. But I think there's a lot of there's a lot of opportunity with a lot of these bases. They can be, if you practice the maze, they're tough to hold. Even spots that look really easy to hold. There's like a shot round the back. There's a shot through the base. There's something else. There's always something you haven't considered. When you think you've locked down a base, the third team shows up. Maybe you were sticking out in a panel because you were trying to shoot someone else, but there's always a spot where you're a bit vulnerable. And I think the good teams will be the teams that can really arrive, burst in, get bases, leave.
In the limited, maze experience that I've got and what I've seen, I've never seen a maze quite like this, in the sense where how high or low you are is so important when you're holding a position.
Yeah.
So you'll get into a spot and you're like, oh, when I stand here, I actually have to be like 3 inches lower than what I am, because there's a like a half wall and there's a shot from somewhere else, and like your body positioning and like whether you stand high or whether you stand low seems to be
crazy.
There's so many low holds. I've never seen an arena with so many low holds like this, and so being able to get up and down really quickly is going to be that's going to be really, really important.
Yeah, I think it's really hard when teams have just all larger people, and it's like, what do you do? Like, what can you do? We just spend hours just drilling and those holds, trying to get them to a decent enough level, whereas teams that have those smaller players can walk in and hold them relatively easily at a really quick pace. So definitely going to be interesting to see.
You sound bitter.
I'm a little bit bitter that I don't have shorter people on my team.
Yeah, fair enough.
Might pick up Bella.
GINNY?
Bella for one up.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. So GINNY, as a runner-up of ZLTAC 2018, how's your team? How are you feeling about you guys one up this year?
Yeah, so much uncertainty, I think, is the biggest thing for us. I think we haven't come into these training games with a heap of pre-nuts experience, which I think is a little bit different for us. We have, though, instead of getting like 3 hours of training, got like 13 hours of training. So definitely a different approach for us. So we're coming into the comp with a bit more maze time under our belts and warming into it. We've been training overall like a reasonable amount at home, but we don't have a great amount of competition that can really take it to us. So we are often training against ourselves. So I think the round robin is going to be a really good indicator for us. I think you probably expect us to finish not fantastic in the round robin, but as the comp goes on, I think we'll start to close the gap as we can really know the maze and really start using our pack on pack skills to their full potential. Because I think at the moment we're not strategically executing fantastically, because we don't know the best way to execute in the arena. It's so hard to know how games are going to get played out, especially in those high-level cascade games where you've got 2 strong teams. It's going to be really interesting to see.
It's definitely a different kettle of fish.
Absolutely.
How do you feel about the Wolfpack this year, Payne?
I think our performance leading up to Nationals has been fairly indicative of the fact that we're probably not in the best form. I think, obviously, pre-Nats 3, everyone was aware of us, I guess, not performing as people expected. I think training games at the, between now and since then have shown that I don't think we're the best team in Queensland this year. Going into the event, there's a chance that we will improve during the event. However, I think we're definitely not the best team in Queensland at the moment. Fingers crossed we improve, but look, there's a lot of talent in Queensland at the moment, And it's
I think we've talked enough about the top teams and the elite players. Who are some of those? Do you guys want to throw out some teams that you think might surprise people that might do better than expected?
Yeah, look, I definitely don't want to overlook Grizzlies. Like, I don't think they're necessarily the team you think of when you list the top teams. I don't think they're necessarily one that you put on paper straight away, especially with the Sharks being so dominant as the top team in WA for so long. But training against those guys have put in some hours on Helios, and
they beat the Wolfpack.
Yeah, exactly. And I think they've got a lot of smaller guys, and not saying full credit to them. Those guys are playing extraordinarily well. But I think the Maze definitely suits their team overall, and I think they're definitely a team to watch out for this year. They've got the pack-on-pack skills now with having a Helios side to play at. They comm really well. They've got heaps of the strong WA comms that you see in the Sharks. And then they've got the pack-on-pack ability to back it up. And I think that on paper, it'd be very easy to sort of ride them off as a not overly strong team. But they're definitely a team to watch out for this year. I wouldn't be surprised to see them hovering around that top 5 spot for a big portion of the competition. They may not end up there, but I think they'll be able to take it to those teams and be able to potentially cause some upsets along the way as well.
Sure. What do you think, Payne? Who's the team to look out for?
I think there's probably a few teams to look out for at all different levels. I think it'll be GP, always a dark horse.
Sure.
I mean, last year they probably didn't have the result they were hoping for. This year, coming back, had the timing for longer. Probably still the sadness of last year fueling them on.
Yeah, but they don't have Milky, and I thought he was just so good.
Yeah, but they have Dexter. And Dexter in those mazes, that's got to be strong. I think that is a hold which suits a guy with that much experience at a top level perfectly. I don't think I'm thinking about the top teams now, and nobody has anyone of that height, right? And I think that that and
Nakans would be their closest.
Yeah,
probably.
of course. But how often is he playing inside the base, though, right?
No,
I think that between that, them getting the timing right, the motivation from last year, and potentially seeing them wall hugging this year, they could be up there, right? I think there's so many unknown factors that could mean that we could see them right back up there. They've had a lot of time to adjust. They've seen the way we play now. It's very easy to just chuck on Australian settings back home and assume the way it gets played, but to see it firsthand, I think it'll be really interesting to see how they go this year.
I've got two teams that immediately come to mind that I think are going to surprise people this year. I think one of them is going to be Sydney Basilisk.
Sydney Basilisk?
The top Sydney team.
You reckon?
Yeah. So we've got Spider's got a year worth of experience now.
Yeah.
They've recruited Volley, who was playing on their B team previously, as a bit of an experienced kind of impact player. I just think the Sydney Basilisk are really gonna surprise people, and they'll start making waves in the scene.
I thought they had a great year last year when they came from in Adelaide they got high 20s. They dropped down to 16th. Are you saying by they'll surprise people they're going to go lower?
I think they'll be around that level. I think,
Okay.
but I don't know where Sinkless put. I think actually Sinkless might have put them there. So I think they've probably got the potential to start scratching at maybe 12th or 13th.
Yeah.
Which, with the depth of the competition now, is an extremely respectable result.
Of course.
The other team that I want to point out, which I think is going to be kind of in that same bracket, is New Zealand Basewatch. Is it Basewatch?
Basewatch.
Yeah. So I remember a couple of years ago in Adelaide, the leg. Took a bunch of relatively unknown players, and they just mayhem, and I reckon we're going to see something similar. Except they've got more talent now. They've got Crouchy and Arrow, who was the solos finals last year. They've picked up Goofy, Rubu, Fantasy Rubu. So
they're not Fantasy Rubu.
They're a strong lineup.
Yeah,
there's
team,
definitely no question. And I've spent some time training against them, and they've definitely got the skill level. It's just whether they've got the strategy to execute on that high level to really crack that top 10. I think there's the potential to. They've got the players. It's just whether we see them sort of show up on the day.
Yeah, 100%. I think we're going to wrap that up, guys. So what we'll do is, all I want to let you guys know about now is that there will be a stream schedule. If you go to the ZLTAC Facebook page, you'll find a complete broadcast schedule. Every couple of days, we're going to have a show similar to this, whether it be about Worlds or about the European scene or about the Sinks list. We've got heaps of stuff coming up. Stay tuned. Please like the channel, subscribe to the channel, do the thing that you do. I don't know what it is.
Turn the notifications on.
Yeah, turn the notifications on
and
subscribe.
YouTube?
Is it? That's not YouTube. Twitch platform. You can subscribe to Twitch, can't you?
I don't know.
Yeah, you can
follow
subscribe.
and turn on those alerts.
Yeah. Do what you need to do. But thank you so much for joining us. We're going to sign out, and we'll be back tomorrow for some team games.
Sensational.
What time do we start tomorrow? 8 o'clock?
So captains and refs meeting I think happens at 9. Volleys meeting, media crew meeting happens at 10.
So team games will start around about
10, 11. Like between 10 and 11, I think.
Yeah, so make sure you tune in at 11 o'clock local time tomorrow, and we'll start getting some team games underway, round robin.